Howdy folks, AJ coming at you again, your resident vintage gamer. Today we're going to talk about D&D 5th edition versus Pathfinder. Without further ado, let's go. Okay, to start off, let's with full disclaimer here, I am playing both. I am currently in a 5th edition Dungeons and Dragons game, and I am in a Pathfinder game. And I've been in my Pathfinder group now for about a year, I think, and the D&D group a few months. So I have had time under my belt with both of them as a player. I'm not DMing either system at this point. So let's talk about the characters first, just so we can give it some context. For the Dungeons for 5th edition D&D, I am playing a thief, thief archetype of rogue. In 5th edition, you pick a class. I picked a rogue, and then when you get to a certain level, I believe it's 4th level, you get to pick an archetype, and I picked the thief archetype. And so that's one difference between D&D and from this point forward, I'm just going to say D&D. I'm not going to keep saying 5th edition. Between D&D and Pathfinder. And then in Pathfinder, I am playing let me go back. My rogue is a half-elf. So half-elf, rogue, thief archetype, and his name is Dash Swiftstep. And for Pathfinder, I am playing Crislock Stoutbelly, a Dwarven Ranger. He is currently level 9. And Dash, because I haven't been playing as long, he's level 7, which is about right comparing the amount of time put into both. We actually played this one on a weekly basis, my D&D group. And we only played this one every other week. So that's why I should give you some context as to the progressing of the levels and all that. So the first difference is that for D&D, you get to pick an archetype. And with Pathfinder, there are advanced classes in the Advanced Player's Guide that you can specialize in and so forth. But with D&D, when you hit 4th level, you have to pick an archetype. And each one of them has different advantages and so forth. So just from looking at the character sheets, the differences are quite apparent. There is a lot more to keep track of in Pathfinder. There is a lot of stats. Let me see if I can hold these up side by side so you guys can see them there. But the difference is considerable. Let's try and do that there. There is, with respect to things like, with Pathfinder, you have your combat maneuver bonus, combat maneuver defense, and then you have a bazillion different little multipliers and modifiers for all different sorts of things. With D&D, they have it's a much more streamlined system. Now, that has its bonuses and its negatives. I think both systems have. You could say they both have their pluses and minuses, but it all comes down to the person playing. And what I mean by that is, for Pathfinder, with all of the multitude of multipliers and modifiers and all these different things, you could really specialize in doing certain things very well. For instance, with my ranger, I have, with the feat system with Pathfinder, I have turned him into a frickin' sniper with my composite longbow. He started out with a crossbow, but I changed him over to composite longbow, and you have things like point blank shot, quick shot, multi-shot, whatever, rapid reload. Well, rapid reload's like crossbow, but you have all these different feats and things, and so I'm down to the point now, where I can do some pretty decent damage, and I don't miss very much. So so there's that, and with D&D, it's combat goes a lot faster with the D&D system because everything is streamlined, and you're not looking at a gazillion little modifiers trying to make sure you got everything and all that. So it just depends upon your play style. Do you really want to be able to specialize to the extreme, as you can do with Pathfinder easily, and it could be done in the D&D system. It would just mean that the DM would have to use some house rules and things like that. And for instance, my DM for my D&D group, he's allowed me to use a modified version of the first edition thief skills for my rogue, which does allow for that. Does allow for me to try and specialize in, say, pickpocket or open locks or whatever, and so that can be done with D&D. It's just up to the DM, and so the bottom line is I'm having fun in both systems. They both have their pluses, their minuses. If I had to say from this point forward, I can only play one system of these two, and I had to pick one, I would probably pick the D&D 5th edition. I would probably pick it because I feel like there is less minutia involved, particularly with combat, and it allows me to roleplay more, focus more on roleplaying than it does paying attention to stats. Now, having said that, there are things I do like about the Pathfinder system, but I would say not enough to overtake the fact that if I had to choose one, I would pick D&D. Now, I guess the Pathfinder system could also be used for the next point that I'm going to make. The Pathfinder system could be used in Forgotten Realms or Greyhawk or whatever world you wanted to use, and I guess you could use that in those game worlds. But of course, the native game world for D&D is Forgotten Realms right now, and our group for D&D is playing through Horde of the Dragon Queen, part of the Tyranny of Dragons campaign. So that is a very structured campaign and so forth. And where with Pathfinder, RDM has a homebrew game world. I mean, he created the game world, the cities, the geography, you name it, he created it, and of course all the adventures that go therein. So it's two completely different experiences from that standpoint for me. I can't say I can't use that to determine one way or the other, because I'm going one pre-made adventures on an existing game world to a homebrew custom game game world and adventures and everything like that. So from that standpoint, I'm having fun in both. One of the things, when I say that I would pick the D&D system over Pathfinder, one of the things that helped me come to this conclusion at least to this point, is we had a combat, our last session with Pathfinder, we had a session this last time that almost the entire game session that we was this one particular encounter combat. I mean, and we play for 6 hours. That's our usual game time, and I would say 4 hours, at minimum 3, but probably closer to 4, was this one encounter that we had, and the reason was the bad guys that we were fighting all had considerable damage reduction, and several of them out of the group had spell resistance too. So it was very difficult for our spellcasters to do anything of note, do any damage. And those of us that aren't spellcasters, we had to do X number of damage just to do any to them at all that didn't negate. If it wasn't enough, their damage reduction would just negate it. And so we're sitting there whacking back and forth, and it took forever. I don't know if that is the Pathfinder system, if that's part of that is that, or if it is that just the DM designed that encounter particularly difficult. If it's the Pathfinder system that designed that mechanic for all that damage resistant or damage reduction and spell resistance and so forth exists, that I guarantee you in the D&D system, that combat session would not have taken that long, and maybe we would have gotten killed. Maybe it would have been a total party wipe, But regardless, it wouldn't have drug out the way it did. I don't think so. Anyway, those are, and don't get me wrong, I'm having fun with both. So this is not, I'm not bashing anything. But if I had to choose one right now, it would be D&D. That would be the winner for me. And you can say, yeah, maybe it's nostalgia because I'm an old I mean, for God's sakes, I'm wearing a hat, I don't own any Pathfinder gear, but so maybe it's just I'm an old school D&D player, and that could have something to do. I'm trying to be objective here, based upon just what I've experienced, but maybe a little bit of favoritism is leaking through for the D&D system. It's possible. So anyway, those are my thoughts, guys. Feel free to leave your thoughts below and all that, and we'll catch you guys on the flip side.